Esther Roll, Lenny Kravitz, Kelvin Lockhart, T. N. Tamara Mori, Michael K. Williams, Sir Sidney Poitier. These are just a few entertainers known worldwide who are either Bahamian or have Bahamian roots. And let's talk about it. I'm here to speak about the one who basically started it all, but it's not who you think. But before I get into that, let's talk more about black people and cinema. And before I get into that, I got a flight to catch. The word cinema comes from the Greek word kinemagraphos. Kinema meaning movement and graphos meaning recording or writing. So literally it is the recording of movement. The term cinema as we know it today came from the Lumiere brothers, who are basically known as the pioneers, the forefathers, the grandiose of this beautiful thing we call cinema or filmmaking, with such beautiful films as, one moment, The Exit from the Lumiere Factory in Lyon, Le Jardinier, meaning the gardener, Le Mer, meaning the sea. Around this time, film itself was a physical entity being printed on strips, and each one of these strips were about 56 feet long and basically gave you about 50 seconds worth of recording. We fast forward 100 years or so and we have masterpieces like
You are lying, I never hit you. You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
Back to those days. During this time in the late 1800s, it's fair to say that black people were treated less than fairly, and that's really putting it lightly. Black people in cinema were portrayed as dirty, filthy, blood-hungry, and constantly craved the flesh of white women. Or was that the 1915 film Birth of a Nation? Either that, or we were portrayed as slow, dumb, or the help. And that's, of course, if we weren't being portrayed by white people. I probably should have started off with that, huh? We had films like The Birth of a Nation and The Jazz Singer, along with many others that used this thing called blackface, where white actors would put on black makeup to exaggerate our movements, our mannerisms, and basically our likeness. Blackface became popular shortly after the Civil War, but that's a different story for a different time. I am not going to speak about the full-blown racist overtones of blackface. That's a completely different video within itself. But by the middle of the 19th century, these blackface minstrel shows became popular and basically a distinctive part of our culture. And now let's not get too confused, okay? It was not only white people doing this. Black actors themselves adorned blackface. Enter Bert Williams. Never heard the name before? No worries, it's kind of why you're here. Bert Williams was born November 12, 1874 in Nassau, Bahamas. By the age of 2 or 3, he and his family relocated to New York City, where he found his way to California in his late teens, also taking part in several minstrel shows on the West Coast. He was literally seen as the superstar in his lifetime. He would do song and dance skits, the comedic stuff. His partner, George Walker, would normally be the victim of his antics, but sometimes they would switch roles, and they notice whenever they switch roles, they get a better response from the audience. And keep in mind, this was a time in American history where stereotyping black people was kind of the thing to do. It was the thing to do. It was the norm, I should say. And being who he was, and also being phenomenal on stage, he became the very first black person to have a lead role on the Broadway stage, literally breaking color barriers. And a Bahamian did that. And during that time, he was even allowed to be on stage with white women, and that was basically unheard of for that time. Also for the time period, he was the best-selling black recording artist before 1920. The New York Dramatic Mirror in 1918 called Williams one of the greatest comedians in the world. And fellow entertainer W.C. Fields called him the funniest man I ever saw, but the saddest man I ever knew. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, folks, with this story. Although Williams became a star and transcended race, it wasn't easy, even with the level of fame that he had gotten. But before I go in more detail in regards to that, I have another flight to catch.
Airman Center Captain Attendant Colbert.
So, according to my studies, he even signed a contract at that time that was worth $62,000. Adjusted for inflation, that is $1.5 million a year. It's crazy, right? He had songs that sold between 180,000 and 250,000 in 1920 alone. But he had his demons. The Actors' Equity Strike of August 1919 took a toll on him. By that I mean the strike happened and no one told him about the strike. It got to the point where as he came to the stage with a completely empty theater, he told W.C. Fields that, "I don't belong on either side. Nobody wants me." Although he was widely successful and extremely popular, he still faced a whole lot of resistance. And keep in mind, this is the early 1900s. Things were different back then. There's a story that I read about Williams the other day. He was at this hotel bar trying to buy a drink, and there was a white bartender that refused to give him a drink and actually wanted Williams to leave. It got to the point where as the bartender charged him $50 for a single drink. Williams, being a Bahamian, didn't take too kind to this. So instead of getting angry or storming off or anything like that, Williams reached into his pocket, grabbed a stack of $100 bills, and paid for the drinks of everyone in the hotel bar. If you know anything about Bahamians, that is definitely something Bahamians would do. Hands down, no questions asked. His star power, you could say, started to dwindle sometime around 1919. Granted, his name was enough to get people in their seats, but profits were starting to dwindle. On top of that, he contracted syphilis along with pneumonia, and he was going through a very depressing time with the racial politics and feeling like he belonged to neither side. This led to chronic depression, alcoholism, and insomnia, but he kept performing. On February 27, 1922, while in Detroit, Michigan, Williams collapsed on stage during a performance. But the audience thought it was part of the act. His last words while being taken off the stage were, and I quote, "That's a nice way to die. They was laughing when I made my last exit." He was taken back to his home in New York, where he died March 4th, 1922, at the age of 47. Only few knew that he was sick, and when the news broke about his passing, the public was shocked. More than 5,000 fans passed his casket, and thousands more were turned away. A private service was held at the Masonic Lodge in Manhattan, where he broke another barrier in death. being the first black man to be honored by an all-white Grand Lodge. When the Masons opened their door to the public, 2,000 of his fans came in, both black and white. It was like at that exact moment, racism didn't really exist. It was all for the love of Bert Williams. His influence went way beyond the stage, gaining praise from people like Booker T. Washington, among others. Duke Ellington wrote and recorded the song A Portrait of Bert Williams in 1940. During World War II, the United States Liberty ship SS Bert Williams was named in his honor. Even down to one of the biggest Broadway shows of all time, Chicago, there was a character based on Williams, the character being Amos Hart. I know a little bit about Chicago. I watched the movie. And even down to music, one of country music's biggest stars, Johnny Cash, did a cover of one of Williams' songs, Nobody, in 2000. And it goes on and on and on. So I guess what I'm trying to say, as a Bahamian interested in films and music, it's important to know those that came before you. We live in a small island nation with less than 500,000 people, and yet we make moves that change the world. And with this small population, we have made some of the biggest entertainers ever. And if I was a betting man, I would say we're just getting started. Thank you all for watching. This is something new that I am trying, this video essay format. Sorry, but the scruff now, it took me a while to film this in between traveling for work. So, hope you liked it. Let me know if there's any other Bahamian figures that you would like videos on. And hey, let's get this ball rolling. This is something new and I'm very excited about. But I do have one more thing for you before I leave. It wouldn't be a true return to form for Gemini Vision Films if I didn't give something away. Here we have a photo taken at the Glass Window Bridge in Eleuthera, the rough side, because I'm adventurous. And I would like to give this away. All you have to do to gain this is leave a like, a comment stating what other Bahamian figure you'd like for me to cover in these videos, and if I should keep on going, along with where you are in the country. So, for example, you should cover Sir Lyndon Pinland. I am in Nassau, Bahamas. Something like that. You don't got to put Bahamas, but you know what I mean. If you are in a family island, I will gladly ship it to you, no cost of yours, but that, I'm trying to gain some interaction here. I'm trying something new, okay? This is a very trying time for my creativity, and I would like the help. Please and thank you. But once again, I hope you enjoyed. So remember, comment who you want to see next. Leave a like. Also say where you're from in the country, and I'll announce a random winner next video. So this could be yours. So tune in next time, and let's make it do what it do.